Hello there and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Telfer and I am joined in this show by my close associate Shaughan McGuigan.
Hello there.
And do you know what happens to the Joseph Kibwetia and the Credorian Morindi of the Terrace get together? That's right, we are going to form a doomsday cult in Uganda called the Movement for the Restoration of the Ten Commandments of God. We're going to preach that to avoid damnation in the apocalypse. Our members must strictly follow the commandments. And then on the 17th of March 2000, 530 people are going to be killed in a big fire in our compound. We will both be missing, presumed dead, and, well, we're either dead or on the run. We might be able to sneak in a little chat about lower league Scottish football. Yes.
Your world tour of doomsday cults that only involve two people shows no sign of stopping. Fair play to you.
And you better believe it shows no sign of stopping because there's plenty more where that came from. I have been on the depths of Wikipedia. There's more doomsday cults that Shaughan and I will be referencing over the course of the 25-26 season. Do tune in. Do see where it takes us next.
Did they find their bodies? Like, are they definitely dead? Or could they? Let's hope not. But could they potentially start this again?
If you go onto the Wikipedia page, it's not exactly clear what happened at the compound in Uganda. I think there was 530 people killed in a big fire, but then there was a number of bodies, hundreds of bodies actually were found in a big pit as well. So the Ugandan authorities couldn't quite get to the bottom of it, no pun intended, in relation to a pit. But we don't know where Kibwetia and Morindi's whereabouts are at this moment in time.
Crikey. Well, let's hope. Listen, let's hope even if they're alive, let's hope they don't start it all over again. That would be awful.
They're probably trying to put a bid in to take over the Ackies at the moment, the way things are going with them. Obviously, we'll come on and talk about the ongoing situation there when we take a look into League One. It's certainly not going well for them. What's the website say? Strategy. Was that one of the spelling mistakes?
Oh, is that? Yeah, strategy. Business strategy.
Yeah, and a lot of lorem ipsum as well there. Maybe you want to populate your website and then publish it, not the other way around. But nevertheless, we'll come on to that. Yes, Shaughan and I are back this week once again with our patented 3-game podcast where we bring you the very best action from the Championship, League One and League Two. No one will have a laugh here or enjoy themselves. You've probably understood that from the introduction there. But nevertheless, it is content about Scottish football, and that is ultimately the main thing. Shaughan, are you well?
I'm very well. How are you?
Yes, good. On Saturday, I was at Stensby versus Hamilton Academical, and I said all right to Inverness Caledonian Thistle manager Scott Kelliker, who was there.
That's cool. Did he reply?
Yeah, he said all right back. I learned my lesson from the Scott Robertson incident, as we'll be calling it going forward. So my interaction with proper football men and footballers in general, I'm going to keep that to a minimum going forward.
Also, it looks like you have had a Christmas haircut.
But I don't think it looks like. I think you know I've had a Christmas haircut because I've told you about it, and that's why I'm recording this podcast slightly later. But yes, I've had my Christmas haircut.
So a Christmas haircut, I always think that is, in terms of haircut importance, just below second to a holiday haircut. But are you happy with it? I think it looks
very
good.
Much so. Very much so. It's nice. It's taken a wee bit of the weight off it. It's thinned out, tidied up at the sides, and I am good to go for my Christmas parties, plural. So that's lock up your daughters and your sons, but mostly your daughters.
Is that this weekend?
Well, we're recording this on Wednesday the 10th of December. It's going to be on Thursday the 11th of December and then on Friday the 19th of December.
And where are you off to?
The Corinthian on Thursday night, and then somewhere for lunch in Argyle Street, Duke's Umbrella, I think it is, on the 19th. So very much looking forward to that. Good to blow off some steam with friends and associates.
I've never been to the Corinthian for a long time. I remember it lost its license due to violence. I believe that was the last thing I ever read about the Corinthian, but I used to quite like it.
Well, listen, if you own the Corinthian and you thinking you're going to get your late licence back after me and my mates pitch up, you're sorely mistaken. Bed for 9 o'clock after we've finished with it. Well, listen, Shaughan, unfortunately, we have to start the podcast with some corrections and clarifications. This is neither a correction or a clarification, but more of an apology. The video version of last week's show that was uploaded to YouTube was missing your audio for the final 20 minutes or so. So it was just a man grinning and going, "You're absolutely right, Shaughan," every 40 seconds or so.
That doesn't sound good at all.
Well, it didn't sound like anything, good or bad. There was no audio.
Well, apologies.
Apologies. We will assure you it will not happen again. And I didn't ask, what are you doing for Christmas? What are you doing for your Christmas holidays? Or not your Christmas holidays, your Christmas lunch, your Christmas dinner?
I'm at my mum's this year. My mum is she's an okay cook. She generally...
I beg your pardon. I meant to mean in work-wise.
Oh,
work-wise, what are you doing for Christmas?
So we don't really have like a big kind of standard life. We used to kind of hire like nightclubs and stuff, and have like a really big one. They're not doing that this year for whatever reason. They also, the other thing they sometimes do would be to like maybe give you an extra 30 quid at Christmas, and then you arrange like a kind of team night out. They're also not doing that either. So ultimately, not really doing anything from a standard life perspective, unfortunately.
Okay, well, let's hope your mum makes up for it then when you go around and see her. But yes, we can assure you of two things. Shaughan might have a so-so Christmas, and his audio is going to be good this time around. Craig Fowler, you are editing this podcast. You are on your best behaviour. It cannot and it will not happen again. But things that are likely to happen again is Ross County to do something silly this season. We'll start this podcast by going to the Highlands, and we'll start with another embarrassing afternoon for the Staggies. They were taking on Airdrieonians at Victoria Park, and they were turned over by 2-1. Gavin Gallagher opened the scoring for the Diamonds just before the hour mark. Ewan Henderson doubled their advantage 10 minutes later. And although Jay Henderson pulled one back towards the end of the match, it was little more than a consolation. County, dreadful season continues. They have dropped to the foot of the table with just 12 points. But that victory has seen Airdrie move from 10th place and into 8th. They've got 14 points and they're cooking quite nicely under the guidance of Aaron Taylor-Sinclair. But Shaughan McGuigan, pray tell, what did you make of Ross County 1, Airdrieonians 2?
I don't want to sound like Danny Dyer when he discovered how close Dens Park and Tannadice were to each other, but I cannot get my head around like how poor Ross County are. I am still, and I know my brain should probably have caught up by this point, but I still find myself getting very surprised when I look at the scores to discover, like I was again staggered at the fact that they managed to lose to Airdrie at the weekend. I think like you get a reasonable degree of how a game pans out for watching the highlights. And like Airdrie's highlights are about 13 minutes. Mm-hmm. But if I'm looking at the comments, like most of the comments were that Ross County didn't deserve anything from the game, which is fair enough. From that if you were there for the 90 minutes, you will know how the game panned out far better than you or me. But in terms of like, quite often I listen to Tony Dockery and his comments after a Ross County game, and I think, I'm not so sure. I think you're posting a very positive picture that wasn't necessarily the case. I do think he might have had a point though. Like it felt like as much as Airdrie done really well, especially the last, whatever it was, 35, 40 minutes or so, it was reliant on what appeared to be a really, really good performance for Cade Melrose in goals. Yep. Like he probably had, in the first half, maybe 4 really good saves. I think 2 for James Scott, 1 from Ronan Hale, 1 from Jordan White. So on another day, maybe he doesn't play quite so well. Ross County get their first goal, they relax, they kind of grow into the game, they get a second. But no, at this moment in time, Ross County aren't getting breaks like that. So as well as Airdrie done, I do think they deserve a kind of big thank you to the performance of the goalkeeper who has bounced back so well from that disaster he had against Partick Thistle, whatever it was, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Yeah,
I think that Melrose does deserve a lot of credit, and he really kept Airdrie in the game. I would also add that County's finishing was really, really poor. Mm-hmm. The saves that Melrose did make, most of them are saves you'd expect a goalkeeper to make. They're not particularly well. There's a couple, I can't quite remember the ones that were. I think there's one from Jordan White is a really good save. But I think the ones from James Scott in particular, they're hit right at him. And James Scott's got a lot of target to aim at. I'd actually put them more down to bad finishing than good goalkeeping. Although I appreciate that Melrose still made the saves in the first place, so he does deserve the credit. I would some of those were bad finishing as well as good goalkeeping.
I would agree to an extent, but I don't see if any of those 4 went in. I don't know if you would say it was necessarily poor goalkeeping. And in terms of Scott's, I think there was one with Scott that
I never said poor goalkeeping. I thought that all the goalkeeping was fine. It was the finishing that was bad.
The one with Scott, I think Melrose saves with his foot. If he'd let that in, that would have been poor. The other one, I think he really does have to dive quite sharply to his left. I still thought they were quite good saves, but I know where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's not to take anything away from him, but to tie back into what you said about Tony Docherty's post-match interview, he talked about a fragility that is there at Ross County, and I think he's spoken about it a couple of times in his post-match interview. Earlier on in the season, he said the fragility, he said, it's a thing, he spoke about it in quite I was going to say a laughy, jokey way. It wasn't in a laughy, jokey way at all. It was certainly something that he maybe understood with the players there and something need to be worked out. I think he's really worried about the degree of fragility that's there at the moment, because they passed up, as we mentioned there, 4, maybe 5 good chances to score before Gavin Gallagher takes the lead, to put Airdrie in front. And from that point on, that it just felt as though that County were never really going to come back into it. There is that degree of fragility there. There is a team that's completely drained the confidence, a group of supporters that actively hate the players that they're watching. They do. I mean, you see the comments on message boards and on social media. This is a team they really don't like. And there's one player in particular who a lot of the anger is being directed towards. And I think that when that goal goes in, when Gallagher puts Airdrie ahead, there's like, oh, here we go again. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that Airdrie were able to pounce on. On top of that as well, I don't know if it was you and I did the podcast a couple of weeks ago when it was Ross County 1, Arbroath 2. Mm-hmm. And we talked about how good Arbroath were on the counter. It was something that David Gold said about bringing on the pacey players, just able to stretch the game. The same thing happened here. It was 2 goals they lost, particularly that second one from Henderson. That's a goal being lost on the counter-attack. I can't understand how a team like County, with all the, on paper, the quality that they've got there, the fact that they've got 3 experienced people behind the scenes in Docherty, Callum Davidson and John Robertson, how nobody's able to get a grip in this, and how no one's able to course correct the season. It just feels like it's just this big sinking hole at the moment in the Highlands, and I really think we need to recalibrate our expectations with County. I think we've gone from thinking, it's just a matter of time before they click and they move on up the table, to think they're genuine relegation candidates at the moment.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. In terms of the counter-attack, I thought that was quite interesting, because I thought watching, especially the second goal, it felt like when I was watching Raith versus Airdrie about, whatever it was, 3 weeks ago at Starts Park, Paul Hanlon's, first game as interim boss. And I do think to a degree that maybe Ross County and Raith might be the kind of ideal team for Airdrie to play against, maybe especially away from home, because Airdrie, I think they now can defend, as much as they were relying on Melrose here. I think they can defend, and I think they have players who can. There's an energy about them, and there is a pace and a kind of willingness, and the fact that Raith are such a kind of ageing team and a slow team, like they really struggled against it. I think it was the second goal at Starts Park where they were still claiming for a penalty in the penalty box. Meanwhile, I think Henderson was about 100 yards further up the park and about to have a shot at goal to score Airdrie second. And I think, again, I thought Saturday played into their hands in terms of the fact that Ross County have recruited experienced players that are maybe on the slow side, and just a team that certainly has a kind of lethargy about them. It just played into Airdrie's hands in that second half, and Ross County just couldn't deal with it.
I think so. I think that's right. I don't know how you. Obviously, we're talking a lot about County. We'll come on and talk about Airdrie, because they're the ones that really deserve all the credit here. Just County are just it's like when a big team loses, that's obviously where the interest goes to, and that's exactly what we're doing with County. I think the only time we've been able to talk about positively about County was after they beat the Rovers 2-0. I think we covered that, and that's a game that could have gone either way. I'm sure that Declan Gallagher had cleared 2 shots off the line, and the second goal to put the tin lid in it came in injury time. Am I right in saying, if I remember that match correctly? I just don't know how they find themselves in this situation. I really don't. I don't know if it's like turning over the squad. They are signing like relative big names that give the impression they're just going up there to, like I say, going up there. I don't know if they're based in Inverness or they're based in Dingwall or wherever. They bus up en masse. I'm not sure what the situation at County is at the moment in terms of the train, but just a whole group of guys who's maybe their attitude's not spot on. Maybe they just think they're just going up there for a kickabout, and they're actually taken aback that teams are able to go and take the games to them. But it just seems to be happening every week. Queen's Park are going up there and beating them. Arbroath are going up there and beating them. Airdrie are going up there and beating them. And these are we all go back to saying these are the three teams at the beginning of the season you'd expect it to be propping up the division. Instead it's County, and they've turned over the manager. It's not worked. I think they can maybe go and turn over the team to some extent in January, because they'll have got resources that outstrip anyone else in that division. But even if they do that, I'm not sure that the new players that come and be going into an environment conducive to take the team away from danger. Like I say, I'm going to repeat myself. It just feels like there's a real stink at the club at the moment. And other than basically just gutting the squad, signing a whole group of new players, I'm not sure what the solution is.
And I think Ross County are, like, we'll talk about, I don't know, Peterhead and Elgin, like struggling to recruit players because they are so far north of the Central Belt. I think Ross County get around that by being able to pay particularly well. Mm-hmm. But I can understand that if you're not overly keen on moving up there for a year or two, then you'll maybe stick at it for that's it, like 1 or 2 years, and that's enough. So I do think in terms of quality, in terms of that squad that they have, I think most of those players get a game for almost everybody else in that division. So I don't think I'm necessarily recruited poorly, but there is definitely something in terms of not quality, but maybe application or attitude. Like see in terms of the first goal, and it's not that I'm picking on him, but I think it was Ryan Duncan that was playing left wing back, and when Airdrie, I think play breaks down, Ronan Hale tries to run round somebody, and actually the ball was essentially, like, he doesn't collect it at the other side. So suddenly the play goes down, Airdrie's right, Ross County's left. Ryan Duncan's out of position. Now, to be fair, I don't think he normally played left back or left wing back previously, but he was certainly there on Saturday. He was out of position, albeit we're now in transition. But there was just a huge gap. I think it was McGrattan. I think the ball looked like it was going to go out of play. McGrattan keeps it in, but nobody at Ross County reacts. And like Duncan kind of jogs back, and then when the ball gets played into the area, there's maybe 2 or 3 Ross County defenders that you would hope or expect would react to it, but nobody really wants to take responsibility or accountability. And you're right, there is something, it's hard to put your finger on, but I don't think it's necessarily quality.
Yeah,
but it's something over and above that.
It's to watch back. I mean, the benefit of watching the highlights, and Airdrie's highlights are really, really good. They are just over the course of the season, they're really good, and they go on for enough time to give you, I think, a decent indication of the game. But the second goal as well is really bad, because there's Declan Gallagher's up at the halfway line. I think it's Chris Mockery that spins him. He tries to get a leg in to take the ball there. Mockery's too quick to get it. And as he's dribbling the ball forward, Ewan Henderson's got all this space around. I think it's Dylan Smith that was playing alongside Gallagher. Doesn't really track him. So Henderson's able to get slipped in. Really good pass from Mockery, touch, and finish for 2. And at that point there, the crowd are like apoplectic with what they're seeing. And it just goes to back to what Docherty said in his post-match interview. You know, he said like they lost the second goal, uphill battle. They tried to change the formation over the course of the match, tried to make them more difficult to beat, and it didn't happen. And now he's demanding more for the players. I think the last time they would have played a match, certainly a league match, would have been against Greenock Morton, when they were beaten 3-0 by them. I think we covered that game there as well. And it's just, how do you change the mentality in the team? There's so many experienced people there who have gone through fallow periods, who have gone through like losses of form. Like Declan Gallagher, for instance, you know, he's having a real tough time of it this season, and somebody that the fans just haven't taken to. He's gone through like turmoil in his past, and he's actually, for someone who has taken the long way to get to the top, he's actually had a pretty impressive career. He's gone through setbacks, but yet it seems to be one of the biggest issues in the team. And I don't know if it's a simple case of taking him out and going with, like, I don't know, Iakoviti or Wright in there. I don't know what it is, and it doesn't sound like Docherty knows what it is either, but you can't just turn through managers.
No, but I suppose the thing about Docherty is, like, so obviously he's now about to presumably get his first transfer window in charge of Ross County, and that's a perfectly sensible thing to do. Like, I don't think they're going to get rid of him before then. But I remember when, like, this time last year, like, Neil Collins had come in at Wraith, and it didn't really feel like I always think a good manager would come in and he's not going to necessarily make a bad squad good, but you can see he has some kind of positive impact. So even when a team's struggling, he will get something more out of them that the previous manager was unable to do. And Tony Docherty doesn't seem to have done that at all. Like, I don't see any any increased positivity compared to when Don Cowie was there. So yes, he might be able to prove them by recruiting well in January, but just in terms of how he's performed overall, like, I don't think he escapes blame, certainly.
No, I mean, they've won 2 games all season. To be fair, they were under his watch, but they've taken 1 point from their last 4 matches. And that point, they were 3-1 up against Ayr United, chucked it away, and ended up drawing 3 each. And I just feel like when we talk about Ross County, I don't like giving folk a kicking, but it's just you're just aghast at just how bad things can be. I mean, earlier in the week, the team went to visit the Highland Children's Unit to deliver Christmas presents, and you're thinking, haven't the kids suffered enough? You know, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. But now the attention, because they've turned over the manager, they've changed the manager obviously from Don Cowie into Tony Docherty. The attention's moved away from what was going on the pitch. It goes to Stephen Ferguson, the CEO, because he's the one that's overseen it. And it sounds like just head scratching. It's like seeing a fight in the middle of the street. You know, it's like very unedifying, but you can't stop watching it, and you don't really want to intervene. You just want to just let them sort them out. That's what this feels like.
I totally appreciate that. It has to be somebody's responsibility. So whether it is Stephen Ferguson and he has to take the fall or whatever, I don't know. But like, in terms of appointing managers, in terms of signing players, like, almost all of the players that they've brought in, or certainly most, and when they appointed Tony Docherty, most people were just kind of nodding to say, this is a good squad. They'll win the league. Yeah, that's a good appointment. He'll definitely get them in the top 4 at the very least, if not challenge St Johnstone after a poor start to the season. So I can understand why people are criticising Ferguson, but it feels like almost every move they've done from, I don't know, May onwards, when they make those decisions, when they sign the players and they appoint the manager, most people are in agreement that it was good, but none of it seems to be working out at all. It's a weird thing to be the favourites for the league, and for most people to think that they will either be first or second, to be bottom of the table when you're approaching Christmas is extraordinary.
It is, and I think we made the joke last time that they could be bypassed by Inverness, Caledonia and Thistle. They could swap places in the division. It just feels, I mean, even you look at like Queen's Park, for instance, and that's a team who we all thought would have a difficult season. The fact that they're doing all right in comparison, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. And speaking of doing all right, you know, we barely touched on Airdrieonians. That's a brilliant result. And as we mentioned, they're cooking along quite nicely under Aaron Taylor-Sinclair. 10 points from a possible 18. Only lost 2 matches as he stepped up after Danny Lenn's departure. And that was to St Johnstone and Ayr United, 2 of the better sides in the division. And it feels like they're in quite a good place. I'm not sure what to make Aaron Taylor-Sinclair. I've only ever heard him speak in his post-match interviews, but he's quite quite quiet, quite softly spoken, not what you'd normally expect from a football manager, but he must have something about him to go into that dressing room and to corral these group of players and to have coaxed out some pretty impressive results from them, this one especially.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I thought he comes across as very, very laid back in his post-match interviews. I mean, let's say the interview lasts for 4 minutes. Probably feels like the questions last about 2 minutes 20 seconds and his answers last about 1 minute 40. Like
he's asked about, in a 4 minute interview, he asked about 27 questions. Okay, he just gives very, very brief answers.
But in terms of, I think I think he's very much simplified things. I think he's probably got the players doing what they were most comfortable doing under McCabe. Now, I know that didn't always go well under McCabe either, but certainly defensively, they're a lot stronger, I think, under him. I think the fact that they are so kind of quick and potent on the counter attack has served them well over the last whatever it is 6 or 7 weeks. And I think for a team that has been criticised for at least one transfer window, maybe even two, that presents them with no forwards, I think they've managed to fashion 2 forwards out of Ewan Henderson and Chris Mockery that are just they play together very well. I thought Mockery at the second goal was absolutely exceptional. So that it feels like that there's a lot to like about them. I don't think it'll work every week. As I said, I thought the way Ross County set up and the nature of their squad kind of suited them. And as I said, Melrose had to have a very good game. But the difference, you think about the difference in them, in their performances and the results under Taylor Sinclair compared to Daniel Lennon's tenure. Similar to, I think it was last season, I'd all but written them off in the early part of the season. Whereas now I think, actually, they've got a decent chance of staying in the division. I suppose the question is, like, you kind of would have thought that Taylor Sinclair would have been confirmed as the manager by now. It feels a wee bit weird that this interim period is going on for so long when it feels like it's been very successful.
You wonder does he want the job on a full-time basis? Maybe that is something. Maybe the club are biding their time while they get Danny Lennon's successor, and Taylor Sinclair is just quite happy to manage the team while they're looking to do that. But nevertheless, I think if it is an addition, it's been a very impressive one. It's been a very impressive one, and there's a couple of players I thought had really good games. Craig Ross, who I don't think he's played all that often since joining from Stranraer, but certainly going by the commentary there, he kept Ronan Hill quite quiet, which is great to see. Like I liked Craig Ross when he was at Stranraer, and I really like seeing guys who are playing at a low level get a move into full-time football. It's always good to see full-time teams taking a chance on the guys further down the food chain. And Ross was a player always quite liked at Stranraer. Always thought never the tallest centre back, but somebody who had a good leap in there and was quite aggressive. And it was great to see him like handle one of the best players in the division like quite well as well. Mockery is a player that we have touched on a number of times over the course of the campaign. Somebody who's learning how to be a centre forward effectively, given that he's like an attacking midfielder. There are different skill sets. And then there's Ewan Henderson, who 12 goals for the season. I remember going back to the start of the campaign, when you looked across all the teams in that division, you probably looked at Airdrie and say there's not a reliable goal scorer in there. Every other team maybe has one. You look at a guy like Josh Fowler, for instance, or Tommy Adeloy, or I'm thinking Wraith Rovers, but maybe they don't score that many goals. But every team on paper looked like they had a decent centre forward. That wasn't the case with Airdrie. But you're thinking with Henderson, looks like he could be that man. He's got 12 goals for the season. But Ben Wilson last year had 17, and that we're not even at the halfway stage. And I think Henderson, perhaps criticised in the past for his off-the-ball work, but if you can fashion a team around them, you've got guys like Dean McMaster anchor in the midfield, you've got Gavin Gallagher sort of shuttling in that box-to-box role. The goal he scored, brilliantly taken to caress that first time into the bottom corner. Almost someone saying, like, go on, little one. You know when somebody sends like you ever seen somebody putting a turtle on a beach and it gets taken away by the waves? That's what I would describe that goal, like, just the way it's just passed into the net. It's a lovely goal. But they've got all the constituent parts there. It all seems to be working quite well at the moment. And yeah, there'll be difficult times ahead. It's not going to be all plain sailing. But they just look a lot more functional and a lot more sensible since Taylor Sinclair took charge. And whatever he's doing, he's able to get a tune out of those players. And just thinking, you mentioned, going back to Cade Melrose, it would have been 12 points from 18 had they not shifted that goal against Partick Thistle. They were comfortably the better side in that match. So it's working. What they're doing at Airdrie at the moment is working.
Yeah, I've not checked. I maybe should have done, but I would imagine if you take a form table from when Aaron Taylor Sinclair took charge, then actually Airdrie's form would probably be kind of top 5 material. So if you can just continue, and I appreciate, as you say, they'll go through There'll still be difficult spells this season, I'm sure, but if he can continue on this track, then they've given themselves a brilliant opportunity to stay in the division, and you would presume at some point he will get the job full time. I do think, you said, I wonder if he's not interested. Because this is his second interim spell as Airdrie boss, I believe he said he wasn't interested first time around, but has alluded to being interested this time. So we'll see.
Brilliant. And what I like as well, the fans, I mean, obviously winning games helps, but the fans having an Antigua flag up at the match with them. Didn't realise he'd been capped 13 times from Antigua.
He doesn't sound very Antiguan, but fair play.
Yeah, I can't imagine there's many folk in the Antigua squad that have got an Aberdonian accent, but nevertheless, it's good for him, and well done to Airdrie. Not so well done for the people who took advantage of the season ticket holders who could take a friend along to the match for free. I'm sure they've been absolutely appalled by what they saw. Now, on Tuesday night, both teams were taking part in the Challenge Cup. Both won their matches. Airdrieonians defeated Alloa Athletic by 3-2 at the Rex. Ross County beat Celtic B. Particularly in Ross County's case, I don't really think that's much of a game you can read too much into, given the fact that Celtic B are half-heartedly competing in the Lowland League, and County should be competing to win the championship. But up next, Wraith Rovers versus Ross County.
Wraith's record against Ross County is absolutely awful. So we'll see if Dougie Emery can kind of overcome that particular hoodoo. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a very low scoring draw. I'll maybe go for 1-1.
I'm going for 0-0 for this match. I think County, there's something, you know what, it's like County, they're obviously a good team. They're going to start scoring at some point, and conversely you'll hit Arbroath. Well, they're a part-time team in a full-time division. They're a team that you'd be looking to beat. It's just not working like that. And County are very, very beatable. Talked about that fragility. I think if Wraith Rovers can go ahead, and that's a big if given the fact that this is a team that just doesn't score goals. Tuesday night's result against Hamilton Accies notwithstanding. Team that doesn't score goals, if the Rovers can go ahead, just everyone that kind of team, I can't even believe the Rovers have scored against us. And that is it. They just fold like an origami swan. Greenock Morton are taking on Airdrie at Capello.
Interesting. I'd probably go for a draw again. I think Morton had a really poor result midweek, albeit I think they made changes, especially to the back four. So I don't know how much I would take from that. I'll go for another 1-0 draw, actually.
Fair play. I'm going for a draw for this one as well. And just before we move on, do you remember, I'm going to stick with Morton, but stick with something we talked about a wee while ago. Do you remember when we created a list of lower league superstars who looked like members of the EastEnders cast, and we put Bang Bang Darren Lang from Stranraer and said he looks like Bobby Beale?
Yes.
Can I put Greenock Morton midfielder Cammy Blues looking like Oscar Branning? Can I have that?
I'm not that familiar with soapstars. I would have to double check, but if you say it's a goer, then yes, I'm okay with that.
We need people, if you watch EastEnders and you, I was going to say support Morton, that's a very, very, very small niche intersection, very interesting. But if you were watching the match on Friday night between Greenock Morton and Queen's Park when Cammy Blues came off the bench, you might have said to yourself, Cammy Blues really looks like Oscar Branning from EastEnders. Some goal from Michael O'Halloran as well.
Class had like his first goal in about 3 years or some nonsense. Incredible.
Oh, brilliant. Watching the telly going, when you see a goal like that. Doesn't happen very often. I think the last time I did that did it on Sunday when Oisin McEntee scored against Celtic. Just so you see great goals. Anyway, we'll stick with great goals. We'll just stick with goals in general, and we'll focus on our featured match from League One. We'll head to the Rex, where Alloa Athletic comprehensively dismantled Peterhead 4-0. Lewis Stewart got the Wasps first early on. Luke Rankin added a second on the 59th minute, and Connor Salmon and Callum Burnside netted a quick-fire double late on that added some well-deserved gloss to the scoreline. Alloa have now climbed into second place there on 28 points, but Peterhead, poor away form at the moment. It continues there in 7th with 20 points. Shaughan McGuigan, thoughts on Alloa Athletic 4, Peterhead 0?
Yeah, I mean, I do think the scoreline was very representative of how the game panned out. In fact, Alloa probably could have got another goal or two more. Like Jack Newman had a couple of good saves. I think they hit the bar at one point as well. And I know Jordan Brown was quite disconsolate at full time, as you would expect. He talked about how unacceptable it was and how disappointed he was. And I understand why. The only thing I would say is I do think that on Saturday, and I know Peterhead are generally poor away from home for whatever reason, but I felt like they were up against an Alloa team that, and I'm not saying Alloa are the best team in the league, but I think they might be the best team in League One right now. Like it just feels like, in terms of, like they spoke about, like we spoke about Andy Graham's tenure at Alloa, about how it hasn't always been that fun to watch. We've spoken about how maybe last season, like maybe he didn't use the loan market particularly well, or his recruitment didn't go very well. It feels like all of these things is quite the opposite this season, and it just feels like right now they have hit their groove. And I think even if they played Inverness on Saturday, for example, I think Alloa would have beat them. It looked like just a complete performance. They looked exceptional.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there about recruitment, and I think recruitment of loan players in particular, because if we look at Alloa across the last 3 seasons, how good they've been and how exciting they've been to watch has been pretty much down to the calibre of the loan players that they've had. And we look at the sort of, this is Andy Graham's coming up. He's coming up for his 2-year anniversary. He might have just passed his 2-year anniversary as Alloa manager.
Tuesday night was his 100th game in charge, so yeah.
Class. Love Andy Graham. Absolutely love Andy Graham. So that's great. I'm sure it's coming up for his 2-year anniversary in charge of the club. And if you remember back to that first year where they had guys like Taylor Stephen, who's gone on to do well, he's having a really good season at Arbroath. You have Bobby Wales, who is now signed for Swansea. And you've got Ethan Sutherland, who went to Wolves at the end. So there's all 3 very, very good young players that really did add an element of pizzazz and just like made the team like class to watch. Last season, I actually can't quite remember the loan players that they did have last season. I think the only one that really stood out was Magnus McKenzie, who's now gone to East Kilbride, and he was a left back. That's a left back. You know? and that's not necessarily a position that you're looking for pizzazz from, but I think the attacking loan players they signed weren't able to reprise what Bobby Wales and Taylor Stephen and Ethan Sutherland did. Then you come to this season, and of all the teams involved in cooperation agreements in Scotland, I don't think there's any team that has benefited as much of it as Alloa have from this agreement they've got with Rangers, because the 3 guys they've had, Callum Burnside, Callum Adamson, Lewis Stewart, all guys that are playing well at the moment, making Alloa fun to watch and contributing with goals and assists on a weekly basis. And I think you're right in what you say. I think that Alloa have got a framework there with your sort of their permanent signings, where you've got like a lot of good defenders in there, and you've got your 3-man midfield. Roberts, I know he was on the bench for this one, but you've got Roberts, Hetherington and Skugel. Talk about them a lot with Alloa, and then you can add the fun players in around that, and it's just working at the moment. It's absolutely working, and I think that they were just miles ahead of Peterhead in this game.
Totally. And I think they started the season really well, maybe started with 2 or 3 wins, then had posted a few losses, and now I think they're about 8 games unbeaten. And when they were that spell where they lost a few, I think one of the criticism was that like they were playing with one up front, but they all felt like they were always quite isolated up front. But like, that's not the case anymore. But it feels like they have a good goalkeeper and a good back 4, and then if Stephen Hetherington plays in front of that, that's solid. And most teams in League One are going to struggle to breach that. And at that point, that just allows everybody else to play. So you're right in terms of like Burnside and Stewart, they can now just get a lot closer to Luke Rankin, and it just feels like they're just creating chances like every week, just creating an abundance of chances. And you'd have to do quite poorly not to take like a number of them. Like I'd be very, very excited if I was an Alloa fan right now.
And on top of that as well, we're talking about how good they are going forward. It's when Andy Graham mentioned his post-match interview, I actually had to rewind and say, did I catch him right? I'd look back at their stats. Since losing 1-0 to Queen of the South at the beginning of October, Alloa, they're unbeaten in League One, 5 wins and 4 draws. In those 9 games, they've conceded just 2 goals, one to East Fife and one to Inverness Caledonian Thistle. that absolutely fried my mind. And you're right. I know that Liam McFarlane had to drop out of this one through illness. So fellow guy had to play in this game. Didn't have much to do in this one, if we're being honest. I think there was a chance for Kieran Shanks that he had to beat away. I think that was as most difficult as it got for him. But it's just the framework there, and guys like Scott Taggart, especially. Scott Taggart's just a good player. I think was it Cammy O'Donnell has now been reshaped as a left back.
Yep.
I think there's been injury issues with Callum Waters and Daniel Church, so they've not been able to play as often. So what do is you take who's pretty much like a jobbing winger. I mean, if you want to compare like O'Donnell to say the likes of like Burnside or Adamson, or Stewart, they're not quite as flashy as those guys. So just get him to play at left back. And it's working. Defensively sound, quite a difficult player to break down. And he's still able to show those attacking qualities because I think he set up two of the 4 goals. And it's something interesting as well. It's what Jordan Brown said in his post-match interview. What made this defeat even more disappointing was they knew what Alloa wanted to do. They want to get the ball out wide and get balls across the face of goal, get balls into the box. They'd worked on it at training, yet 3 of the 4 goals come from crosses. Like low balls out wide and into the box. So it's great to see Andy Graham doing well because I've spoken my admiration for him a number of times in this podcast, and I think coming into the season, had he been moved on or had he stepped down or whatever, I don't think many fans would have been all that fussed about it. And now the guy's going great guns, so that's brilliant. Great to see.
I think as well in terms of they maybe have a wee bit more strength and depth than most part-time teams in League One. Like the fact that they were bringing on, and I know he's a good age now, but like Connor Salmon, like when he came on the week before, I wasn't at the game, but the Scottish Cup tie against Wraith Rovers. So speaking to the people that were there and watching the highlights, like although Alloa kind of held Wraith at arm's length, when Salmon came on, that certainly made a difference in terms of troubling Wraith, I suppose. So he still has that ability. Like, he's still a really good player. Scored in this one. I think it's his first league goal of the season. Unusually,
good goal,
but a good goal. And then the fact that I'd kind of forgotten about Callum Gallagher. I remember when they brought him in, I was like, "Oh, that feels like a good signing." Now, like he's coming back. He come on at the weekend. So there's a wee bit of strength and depth. I think more than most League One teams, or certainly more than most. Even most League One teams in general, with the exception of Inverness. And I think, I don't think for a minute, that they could challenge Inverness, because I don't think they would be able to have that. Because as much as Inverness haven't been that good recently, but they've been churning out wins, which I think maybe Alloa would struggle to do. I think there'll be more peaks and troughs with Alloa than there will be with Inverness. But certainly compared to like teams that we thought might challenge, and I know Hamilton have got issues off the park, and then Queen of South are a full-time team that aren't performing very well, and Cove Rangers are thoroughly disappointed. But I don't see any reason that Alloa don't finish second this season. They're certainly the most impressive team I've seen in League One, out with Caley Thistle.
I can't disagree with that. And that's I'm looking just at the guys that were able to bring off the bench, like even guys like Calvin Orsi, Callum Gallagher, Connor Sam, Stephen Buchanan, all guys that would regularly start for the team. They can't get into the team at the moment. I think that was something that fans were maybe worried about at the beginning of the season when they signed. We mentioned like Dan Church, who I think over those 2 seasons at Queen of South had maybe only played something like 9 games, something like that. Callum Waters, very good player, has been great for Alloa in the past, but quite injury prone. Callum Gallagher, injury prone, couldn't really get into the Arbroath team last season. And I think that's what fans were slightly dismayed about, was that there was a lot of like, how fit were these guys? How much were they able to contribute? And well, the answer's no much, but it doesn't matter because all these youngsters are doing it. And it just holds Alloa in good stead. You know, if you're I think that people will see Alloa. I think I've said this for a long time. People see Alloa as a club. If you send your young boys to Alloa, they're going to get game time. They're going to leave better players than the ones that. I mean, Bobby Wales, like a really good example for that. Like his season at Alloa, you could tell this guy's really got it, and then goes and has a really strong season with Kilmarnock. And it's a shame that he's playing like academy football with Swansea at the moment, because he should be playing men's football. But nevertheless, he had the building blocks in place. Fundamentally, a very good player. but was allowed to flourish at Alloa, and that's what's helped him kick on. Is there anything to be said, Shaughan? We're very effusive in our praise for Alloa Athletic. Anything to be said about Peterhead at all?
Just, I suppose, just in terms of it's not polar opposite. It's not quite. Remember last season, like Queen of South won more points than anybody else in League One, even Arbroath at home. Then they won, like nobody won fewer points away from home. Like it's not quite at that stage. But there's definitely something, like you saw the week previous against Morton in the Scottish Cup. What was the highlights? I thought Peterhead looked pretty good. And I think the last time we spoke about Peterhead on the podcast, we were really enthusiastic about them actually.
Yeah.
Spoke about the fact that they were scoring goals. It felt like even though they're a kind of smaller club, it felt like they're doing a lot of things right. I think I'd say that if they were a bit closer to me, I'd maybe try and get to a game or two.
Yeah.
I think it'd just be Queen of South 3-0. I think that was a game that we discussed. It does feel like they've fallen away a wee bit in terms of the form. Now, they've still picked up 20 points from 16 games. Don't think there's anything to worry about as such. But I always think where you've got good home form, good away form, if that continues, they'll be fine. Your concern would be if that away form continues, but the home form starts to drop off, then suddenly they are having to look quite nervously over their shoulder. But I still think by and large, they've performed, like they've had a decent season so far, but just the last kind of 4 or 5 weeks, you are now starting to have some concerns about them, I suppose.
I think so as well. Something that Jordan Brown said in his post-match interview, where he said a drop in form leads to a drop in results, leads to a drop in confidence. And they've picked up in the league, that's 1 point from their last 4 matches. And that was, they were quite comfortable against Montrose until Big Andy Sieves scored right at the end of the game. If you want to extend that a wee bit further though, Shaughan, that's 7 matches without a win. I suppose you can maybe say they beat, they drew with Morton. Some of the games were against like higher opposition, like against Morton in the Scottish Cup, and on Tuesday night against Ayr United in the Challenge Cup. But even so, I think that must become quite demoralising, and I just don't know how you kind of, again, I'm hopeless. I'm sort of like asking rhetorical questions, but how you try and remedy that. Because they're ultimately like a good side. And I think if Peterhead ultimately do finish in mid-table, which I think they will, I think they'll finish about like 6th or 7th, that's a good season. But just that when the results aren't going your way, and we saw them got obliterated here, pumped by Steny as well in their last game. There's 2 league games where you can see the 8 goals in 2 matches. I think that's a bit of a worry. They just seem to have a bit of a softness at the moment, and that's not something you'd ever associate with, like, certainly Peterhead since Brown and Strachan have been involved.
Yeah, I suppose they are still one of the smaller teams in that division. Like, obviously came up from the 4th tier last year. You would still regard Peterhead as being one of the... I don't think anybody expected Peterhead to be challenging for promotion, put it that way. If they stay up, that's considered a good season. I think Saturday's massive though, because as much as they still have a good bit of breathing space, even though they're 7th, good bit of breathing space between themselves and certainly 9th and 10th. But to be coming up against Kelty, if they were to lose that one, then suddenly, yes, there's some concerns, I suppose.
I wouldn't be concerned with losing to Kelty Hearts at the moment. Having watched the highlights from their game against Montrose, all is not well there, and you'd fancy Peterhead to win at home against the worst side in the division.
I think they will as well, yes.
Yeah. And Alloa Athletic versus Cove Rangers.
Cove have certainly improved recently. However, if Alloa can replicate what they've done at the weekend, I would expect them to win that.
I think so as well. Now, we are time-stamping this podcast beyond belief, and this might have already happened by the time it's published, and it might have already happened when we're recording, but the Daily Record is reporting that Hamilton Academical will go into administration this week. I'm going to quote from the article. It says, "It is understood the club has spoken to administrators in the last few days amid a consortium completely pulling out of a takeover bid for the embattled outfit, and plans are now in place to give the 151-year-old institution the best opportunity to survive. Another party is showing interest in a takeover of the League One outfit, but is unlikely to get involved with the club in its current form." I mean, it's been worrying times ahead all season, and not to be smart arses, it feels like this has been coming down the tracks for some time now.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad, but it's like it is also like the most obvious thing of all time. Like it's just clear that, I mean, it's not just that there are issues at Hamilton. It just feels like they are, certainly behind the scenes, they are, and nobody associated with them is fit for purpose. And this was...
So Jerry Strain's appeal was rejected. So they've no one running the club that's fit for purpose.
Well, how do you function? So I don't think... So if he can't appeal, but I don't think you can force him to step down. So if he doesn't leave, he doesn't have to. But then I think the SPFL could potentially revoke their licence. So essentially they wouldn't be able to play games of football. I mean, it's such a horrible, horrible situation. And I can't imagine anybody is going to step in to save them. And as much as administration has not helped clubs in the past, but what I mean is we've seen teams just recently, Inverness, Dumbarton, they've went into administration, feels like they've come out of it in a far better position than when they entered it. I'm not sure I see that from... they still required... Inverness needed Alan Savage. Dumbarton needed Mario Lapois. Hamilton don't have that. And so I even going into admin, I still wouldn't necessarily be hopeful for the future, unfortunately.
If only... Is it Mario Lapois? Mario Lapointe?
I don't know how to pronounce his... I feel because he's French-Canadian, it's Lapois, but I don't know for certain.
Okay, I'm going to go for Mario Lapointe. If only he, instead of being in love with the Rock of Dumbarton, like a Disney movie, he was more interested in Morrison's. Because if he had been, he could have bought Hamilton Accies, no bother. It's a bad situation. I was at the Stennismuir Hamilton at the weekend there, 0-0 drawn. My match day Stennismuir should have won, really, actually passed up some really good chances, and it does feel like 2 points dropped for the Warriors. But I was talking to Conor Ferguson and Ben Patterson, who both work for the club in the media team, and I was asking, so how's things going? And they were like, everyone's fine, everyone's going well, and they were just... I was asking how things are going, and they just don't know. They don't know. They were desperately sorry to see John Rankin go. I think everyone was really sorry to see John Rankin go. Everyone speaks so well of him, just as a guy in general. I actually think that John Rankin, you've never really seen anyone have anything bad to say about him certainly as a person. Nobody's had anything bad to say about him. And so it was nice to see, and they were just worried that without him being there, this galvanising effect, what would happen. And with Darian McKinnon and Scott Leach taking the club for the time being, I think they're just looking to just more of the same, like continuity candidates. But the end of that match, where the fans in the terrace and where they were, the fans standing and clapping the players going off. So I was watching the Stenny players coming off and giving them a cheer because they had done well in that match. But it just felt quite elegiac. Like the ending of Meet Joe Black, it just felt quite sad. It was like just a bunch of fans were clapping the players and not knowing what's going to happen next, and the players were just not knowing what's happening next. Absolutely brutal. And yeah, you're right. Like the circumstances, you had like Mario Lapointe, businessman who's got the means to drag Dumbarton out of the hole there, and Dumbarton are free from the guys who are just interested in the land. And then Inverness, Caledonian Thistle, it just happens that you've got a multi-millionaire who's a big fan of the club. Hamilton just don't have any of those things. And it just, they say administration is horrendous, but ultimately is a good thing. I don't know what the future holds for them. Really don't know what the future holds for them. Scary stuff. Final, before we move on, Peter Murphy's post-match interview following Queen of South 1-1 draw with Cove Rangers.
I didn't watch it.
4 minutes, 47 seconds.
That's quite prompt for him.
I was briefed by us, and it's like half the time of some of the interviews that he's given earlier in the season. I did listen to, I couldn't see highlights, or certainly they might not have been published by the time that we're recording this podcast, but there was a lot of excuses.
That is like him. Although the time period was short, that sounds very much like him.
He's just getting to the point a lot quicker now. So that's Cove Rangers have got more money than us. They've got greater resources. They can go out and sign players. We can. Right, fantastic. Cheers up the road.
I did read that he said it was a good point. I don't think it is.
Cove Rangers aren't a very good side. I don't think that's a match that Queen of the South should be winning, but I say it all the time. Queen of the South are the most difficult side to try and pin. Queen of the South the most difficult side to try and pin down. Are they good? Are they terrible? I really don't know.
They're definitely not good.
They're definitely not good, yeah. But mate, I did a Dougie everything, like I say, and then mention something that hasn't been referred to at all in the conversation. But when I went to see them against Hamilton at Broadwood, I thought they were actually pretty good. And I thought that'd be, by going more direct, that's a platform for them to kick on. And I don't think it's been the case. But nevertheless, for our third and final match, we will analyse Edinburgh City's win over Dumbarton at Meadowbank Stadium. Oi, Telfer, you do know there's more sides in League 2 than the Citizens? Yes, I know, but it was Michael McIndoe's 100th game in charge of the club. It was our first home win of the League 2 campaign, and it was a 7-goal thriller against a team going through their own existential angst, and that's really who we're going to be focusing on more than the Citizens. So you're just going to have to sit there and listen while Shaughan and I talk about it. This looked like an extraordinary game of football. City took a 4-goal lead. Robbie Mann scored 2 penalties. Bradley Barrett scored deep into first half injury time, and Innes Lawson got the 4th almost immediately after the restart. But Dumbarton fought back. Leighton McIntosh got a brace, and Tony Wallace netted a penalty at the death to ensure a nervous finish, but ultimately it concluded 4-3 to Edinburgh City. Michael McIndoe's team still bottom of the table, but they're up to 8 points and not a million miles away from Dumbarton, who are 8th with 13. Shaughan McGuigan, thoughts on Edinburgh City 4, Dumbarton 3.
An extraordinary game. I think an extraordinary start to Frank McKeown's managerial campaign. 4, of the 7 goals, 4 were penalties, all of them at the same end. 2 of them definitely weren't penalties. Maybe even a third definitely wasn't a penalty. I'm not entirely sure. I think maybe only one of the 4 was definitely a penalty. But regardless, Frank McKeown he seemed quite upbeat in his post-match. I suppose he maybe had to be in that.
Listen, enough about the game. Just get to the Frank McKeown's post-match interview. I'll say this one: it's not often you can do a post-match interview alongside Michael McIndoe and look even more unhinged. So it's really saying something for this interview.
Was there something? It wasn't. I didn't necessarily think it was what he was saying. It was maybe more about how he was saying it and his body language and his weird kind of looks to camera. Like the camera was kind of to his, whether it was to his right or whatever.
Yeah, to his left, kind of he's looking.
Kind of finish a sentence, then look at the camera, and that was I think that's what made it slightly unusual, for want of a better term.
Have you ever seen the Lemmy video? It's a wee shorty that is called A Wee Video for the Lassies from Valentine's Day 2015. Have you ever seen it? I'll send it on to you. It's like this guy, he's like recording a video for a dating website. It's so funny, right? I'll send it on to you because it's brilliant. I'll send it to you once you find out. It reminded me of that. And there was some of the stuff that he said that he said, like, I always say you've got 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. And there's a delivery he says, we've also got good players. And it felt like, I think I saw somebody compare it to an Only an Excuse sketch. It did. And then he lists off like Ryan Blair, Dom Docherty and Kai Kirkpatrick. I mean, decent players, but he's like describing them, you're talking about Xavi, Iniesta and Sergio Busquets. It was just weird. And that's the first time I have been introduced to Frank McKeown like in his post-match interview. And I can't wait for the next one. I'll say that.
And the thing is, it was hard to, and I know they came back from 4-0 down to 4-3, and even Michael McIndoe was trying to be complimentary about them. And to be fair, he did say that he's quite friendly with McKeown. He was saying that for other managers, they might have just folded, but that's never going to be the case for a McKeown team.
And mirrored Franco's passion for football was one of the things he said.
There you go. But the thing is, the fact of the matter is, at 4-0 up, I would imagine Edinburgh probably kind of took their foot off a wee bit, and I think they had to make, Edinburgh actually had some substitutes on Saturday, so they had to make, I think they picked up 2 or 3 injuries, so they had to take off.
A wee knocks,
They had to make changes. So actually for the last half hour, I'm not entirely sure, A, Edinburgh were at their best, or B, giving it their all. So I think that allowed Dumbarton the opportunity to come back into it. So whereas McKeown was taking positives from that last half hour, as he has to, I'm not entirely sure that there was as many as he was suggesting there was.
I mean, the first goal is a goalkeeping error. from Mark Weir, drops the ball and it sort of falls onto his toe and rolls away from him. And I think it's Docherty that squares it to McIntosh to finish, which is, again, not great seeing Mark Weir doing that. Like, I really like big Mark Weir. I think one of the other times we spoke about Edinburgh was after they lost to Elgin City and he had a pretty poor game there. And then the second goal, I cannot for the life of me believe that was given. And what I quite liked, is you need to go back and watch these highlights. It happens it's a yard outside the box. I can't remember who it's Quinn Mitchell concedes it. I think it's Aidan Gilfedder. There's a wee tangle of legs just outside the box, clearly outside the box.
And it's outside the box that I'm not sure it's a foul either. But you're right, it's definitely a curb outside the box.
There's a double whammy. I know Mackindo in the post-match interview was like, it's never a penalty, go back and see it. And he just sort of like brushes over it. I don't know how about brushing over it if that match had finished 4-4 or they'd really come back into it. But I can't really remember Dumbarton creating too many chances in this match to come into 4-3. It sounds good when you say you're 4-0 down and then you come back from 3 goals down. That does show the fighting spirit. But I think when, as you say, Edinburgh making changes, Lewis MacArthur and Malik Zaid having to go off, bringing on guys like Greg Allen, Max Guthrie, guys who I don't think have played very much football like recently. These are two of the new guys who joined just before this match, and then a combination of kind of being given the goals, particularly the first and second goals. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how positive I'd be about it.
I suppose in the reverse way, you can also say that Edinburgh's penalty was never a penalty. Like it was Kirkpatrick.
Kirkpatrick, that was never a penalty as well.
On Barrett, it's quite funny. Like when Robbie Mann puts it away and then he kind of runs over to the fans, you can hear somebody go, "You're nothing but a cheat! Dive!" Just a very upset Dumbarton fan. But I think the thing about Edinburgh was, like, even when they've not been winning games, like I suppose we spoke about last week when they lost to Camelin, like they have been creating chances, and then McAdoo said they just have to become more clinical. So as much as 4-0 up after 55 minutes, you think, wow, this is an incredible performance. But actually, they were doing a lot of the things that they do every week, but just on Saturday they were creating their chances and getting loads of penalties.
I think the issue was, you go back to early in the season, and it was something that Michael McIntosh said. I think it was after they drew with Annan, and we'd spoken about it, how they had to go direct for a reason. They wanted just to just scrap and get points on the board and let's claw back that deficit. But now they've done that, they're back to themselves, and we've said a lot of times about Edinburgh, the players, the ball carriers they've got in that team, all of them contributing here. You mentioned one of the shouts from that, you're none but a cheat. I think it's from the second penalty, and this was a penalty. I think Shea Kelly brings down Innes Lawson. Man, again, runs to that corner to Selby, goes, "Get there, fucking sort it!" for the away support. I suppose the other goals as well, just to touch on them, it's another mistake from Shea Kelly there, misplacing a pass straight to James Stokes. Although Stokes' efforts blocked, it falls very conveniently for Bradley Barrett. Nice finish into the net. And then the fourth goal from Innes Lawson, I might be right in saying that Edinburgh's highlights, they actually, from kickoff, they actually just keep going all the way up to the goal. Am I right in saying that? It's basically, I think it's Jason Jarvis. There's a really nice pass between the two centre backs, and then Lawson's there just to lob it into net. It's a really, really good goal. So although Edinburgh didn't necessarily create much in this game, I think that's something, again, going by McIntosh's post-match interview, they were ruthless in this game, and it's good to see them chipping away at this lead. I mean, one, because I like Edinburgh and I want them to do well, but also it just creates a degree of tension and a degree of jeopardy at the bottom of the table with teams like Dumbarton, Stirling Albion, Annan, maybe Stranraer at the moment to a lesser extent, because Stranraer are absolutely having the last couple of weeks, Stranraer have been fantastic. Certainly for those three teams, I think there'll be a degree of anxiety. So it just makes things interesting just with them coming back into it. And it's exciting. So they've signed Guthrie and Allen. Max Guthrie was on loan at Stranraer last season from Ayr United. And he was one of Stennismuir's Magnificent Seven, one of the boys that was brought on at the start of the season just to carry him through the injuries. Can't really say I saw too much of him suggest he'd be good enough for League One, but McIndoe's an alchemist. McIndoe might be able to get something fantastic from him. Another player that's come back this week, in fact, just a couple of days ago, Shea Scally, who had been at the club last season, had gone to the United States for whatever reason, maybe a soccer scholarship or whatever, but he's back playing for Edinburgh as well. So it's another option for them. So I think that going forward, great to see Edinburgh have the resources they need to go and kick on, and two, create a number of teams being very, very nervous at the foot of that table.
Yeah, I was starting to worry about them. And that,
I was never worried. Never worried about them.
I was a bit like, especially after the Camelin result, I was like, oh, geez, for a team that people were saying, oh, maybe they could still finish top 4. Despite that point,
I'm still saying they're finishing top 4.
I was
still
like,
saying it.
They're not closing that gap quickly enough. They've went in the Scottish Cup to Camelin. They've got no substitutes ever. I was starting to worry about them. However, I think Saturday was a huge result. The fact they've managed to bring in reinforcements, the fact they've managed to close that gap to, I think it's 5 points now. So no, I'm now far more confident. Don't think they'll finish top 4, but I also don't think that they'll finish 10th.
Right, I will. Right, putting this in here, right, I'll 20 quid bet with you that Edinburgh finish top 4.
Okay, fine.
Okay, right.
Fine.
But you've got to give me £40 if I win. I give you 20. You've got to give me 40. The odds are in your favour.
No, I'm not going to do that bet. That's a rubbish bet.
But it's more like, but we're doing it by odds. It's a good bet for you, Shaughan. You could win £20, which seems pretty good, or you could lose £40, which seems less likely.
I think what would be that kind of horrible aspect of that bet is though that I would potentially at some point stop cheering Edinburgh on, and I don't necessarily want to do that because I quite like them. So right, it's not £20
in. £20.
Right, okay, let's go for that.
Right, there we go. That's it. Set in stone. Some of the fucking losers in the Discord can clip this up and keep a note of it. Because with these podcasts, you just say things and you're on to the next. So I barely remember what I said, but so hopefully somebody can remember. There's a £20 bet with Shaughan that Edinburgh City will finish in the top 4. I don't think Dumbarton will finish in the top 4.
No, definitely not. Watching that game, it very much feels like two teams going in different directions, and one should be looking up and one should be looking behind. I know Frank McKeown talked about the fact they've got good players in that team. I don't know if there is scope to bring in additions in January, but it feels like they need them. See when a team's struggling and they replace a manager, and then they bring in an assistant that's been there for a long time. And I always think if that person had loads and loads of good ideas, why wasn't he bringing them to the table like previously? I think the fact that, like, it sounds like Dumbarton have suggested that they done a recruitment process, and yet the rumours were that, so Farrell, did he get the bullet on the Monday? Was he Sunday? Right, so it was announced that he was gone on the Sunday. There was rumours on the Monday that Frank McKeown was going to get it, and then I can't remember what day it was officially confirmed. But even if those rumours on the Monday were made up, that was a very, very quick recruitment process. If you are taking applications and doing interviews, so I struggle to believe that they've done a thorough kind of managerial overview for who they were going to bring in. So interested to see how it pans out, but I think they could have taken their time, put it that way.
It feels, and this is very early days, it feels like a misstep from Mario Lapointe. And what I mean by that is, I've always quite liked Frank McKeown. I really liked him when he played for Stranraer. I liked him when he was a captain there. I thought he did a really good job and a really important player with Stevie Aitken's team. And although we're kind of like poking fun at his post-match interview, I think that there's perhaps an honesty there. He generally does, but wants to make these players confident. He talked about Leighton McIntosh and saying like he can't believe that he can score goals, but the players have to believe in what I'm saying to them and fight. So like the dreamers, we love the dreamers, you know? So, but what I would say is the optics look terrible. You've touched on it there. He was Stevie Farrell's assistant for 4 years. Now, even if he did have some astonishing out the box ideas, and he's got all these fresh, interesting tactics that he wants to bring to the team, he's got the stinky Stevie Farrell on him. Now, Stevie Farrell, we talked about him a lot, divisive manager at Dumbarton, and I think by the end, I think even the Aitkins Army for the Facebook group had even got fed up with him. So rightly or wrongly, Frank McKeown is inextricably linked with Stevie Farrell, and it feels like you're getting more of the same. It felt like you've rushed into something. There was no need for it to be for him to be appointed so quickly. Why not give him to January? Give him to January and put a recruitment process in place where you're out there talking to managers. They may have had a robust recruitment process. Maybe all the interviews were conducted by Sunday evening and they were ready to give him the job on the Monday. I don't know. But it just feels like, I think fans, when Farrell moved on, fans were like, well, right, we can have a reset here and we can go in a different direction. And the optics, even if he's got all these great ideas, even if McKeown was the very best person they interviewed for it, they still shouldn't have given him the job just because it feels like you're getting more of the same. And you look at the fixture list that they've got coming up as well. So they're playing East Kilbride at the weekend, the league leaders. You're playing Inverness Caledonian Thistle in the Challenge Cup. They're the best side in League One. After that, you're playing Stranraer. They're the most informed side in the division. Then you've got a massive game against Stirling Albion. Very conceivable that Frank McKeown has lost his first loss against Edinburgh. You lose those other 3 matches before the Stirling Albion games comes up. You have absolutely zero credit in the bank. And it felt as though he had a job just because of his association with Stevie Farrell. It felt as though that he had a lot of work to do to win round the supporters. It feels like I hope he can get something for some of those games. Like they can beat East Kilbride, or they can maybe knock Stranraer stride. They can beat Stirling Albion or whatever. Because it just feels like we're off to a bad start already. And yeah. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong with that.
No, I think you're right. And it just feels like for all the good stuff that the new owner has done off the park, and it feels like it has. It feels like he's done loads of good stuff off the park. In terms of on the park and in the dugout, he's come up a wee bit short so far, and that could be catastrophic.
It could be. I mean, there's sort of 1 win in 10 now. Is as bad as that in all competitions. They've lost. They were beaten 4-1 by Forfar Athletic, 4-0 by Auchinleck, 4-3 here. So the defence is a massive issue. I think they'll have to do something. I think he changed the shape at half time. He went for a 3-4-3. So he did something. He did something a little bit different there. I think that's the big problem. I know it's if the team's not doing well, you need to go back to basics. So you need to. I'm going to assume this is what coaches do, but you need to make the team more difficult to beat. So you just make the team horrible to watch, and maybe have like 5 boys back, and then like 1 up front and play from there. But it just feels like that's something that he needs to do. Like East Kilbride are a really attacking team. East Kilbride are capable of taking goals. East Kilbride have already taken goals off them earlier in the season. Stranraer are playing so well at the moment. That game against Stirling Albion at the weekend, they created dozens of chances in that match. 3-2 flatter Stirling Albion. They beat East Kilbride on Tuesday night. Yes, the East Kilbride goalkeeper didn't have a particularly good game, but the fact they're creating chances in those horrible conditions. Darren Lang's become one of the best strikers in the division somehow during this period. So it's a horrible run for McKeown at the moment in the build up to this Stirling Albion game. It feels, like I say, I'm just repeating myself. I hope I'm wrong. We did mention there, Shaughan, there was the Challenge Cup results don't really matter. Forfar Athletic won, Edinburgh City won, Forfar won that in penalties. Dumbarton versus Inverness Caledonian Thistle. That match was postponed anyway because of Inverness to play Trinent in their long-awaited Scottish Cup tie. That match is going on as we speak. So I'm interested to see how they get on the Scottish Cup. It is Trinent 1, Inverness Caledonian Thistle 2 at half time.
There you go.
But so we've kind of talked at Dumbarton versus East Kilbride. How do you see that one going?
East Kilbride.
And Edinburgh City versus Clyde.
That will be so Clyde never lose, but they also don't win very many. I'll go for a draw.
Yeah, I'm going for Edinburgh City to win that match. There's always honestly, Edinburgh City could be playing Real Madrid. I think, is Lewis MacArthur back? Is Logan Miles going to play it right back? I think I'll give him a go. But Shaughan, that's enough.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's enough. Listen, if you have enjoyed this podcast, and I really hope you have, please subscribe to our Patreon. For as little as £2 per month, you can access hours of bonus content. Shaughan and I are going on to the Patreon to record a pod where we talk about the signings of the season so far in the lower leagues. And if you want to listen to it, you've got to go to patreon.com/Terrace Podcast. There's tons of great stuff up there. So do dip in. Now remember, if you're in Denniston, go to Redmond's for your lager and your fried chicken. If you're online, go to NordVPN to browse the internet safely and securely. And if you're needing stuff done around the house, go to J Sharp Painter and Decorators for all your interior and exterior needs. Thank you, Shaughan.
No, thank you.
Thank you, the listener. And enjoy your football. And very much like the deeply earnest Da, who was standing right next to the camera in Alloa Athletic's 1-1 draw with the Spartans at the weekend, and who was ceaselessly offering encouragement and positivity throughout, please do so respectfully. Thank you.